Hello and welcome to episode number 10 of Heart Containers, a daily podcast where we discuss the latest Nintendo news every Monday through Friday. I'm your host, Rami Fawaz, and today is Friday, February 8th. Can you believe it? We made it to 10 episodes. It's a monumental achievement for me, at least. This is 2 weeks now. Every day of the weekday, we've had an episode. So, I don't know. I think that deserves a little pat on the back, on top of the fact that we made it to Friday, thankfully. Man, this has been one heck of a week for me. I'm actually really glad that it's over. So let's finish strong with this. Let's have a great episode number 10. There are only a handful of things to discuss today, but some really fun news about role-playing games coming to the Nintendo Switch, so I'm excited to dive into that. So we're going to talk about all of that and more in today's Daily Nintendo Report.
Well, the wait is over. This is Nintendo DS. My body is ready.
We would like to play.
A way to make 3D games a reality.
And it's called the Wii U Gamepad.
The first story on the report is more of an announcement than anything else. I wanted to remind you guys that this weekend there are a couple events going on within some Nintendo Switch games. This is a reminder that there is a pancake versus waffle Splatfest that begins tomorrow on Saturday and ends on Sunday. So again, tomorrow if you're listening to this on Friday. This weekend is also going to be the start of a brand new Spirit Board event for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. They're calling it the Well-Rounded Spirit event, where you will be able to battle for spirits that are circular in some way. So they showed pictures of Metroids and Shine Sprites, anything that could be considered round or circular. You'll be able to fight for those in the Spirit Board mode in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So again, if either of those kind of intrigue you in any way, I don't really care that much about the Spirit Board stuff in Super Smash Bros., especially because I'm done with World of Light and I don't have a lot of motivation to collect more spirits besides maybe just trying to get 100%, but I'm not there yet. I just want to have fun with Smash Brothers. So the one that I think I have the highest likelihood of playing is the Splatfest. I know I've already mentioned it. This will be the last year. At some point this year, they're going to be done with Splatfest for Splatoon 2. And plus, I feel passionate about this. Pancakes are significantly better than waffle. So I will be participating in the Splatfest tomorrow. The next story on the report kind of came out of nowhere, actually. Nintendo announced yesterday on Twitter that starting on February 15th, a week from now, there will be a new limited time Nintendo Switch bundle that includes a $35 Nintendo eShop download code. The tweet continues by saying, quote, "You'll be able to use that credit towards games like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate," end quote. Now, that was the entirety of the announcement. To me, this just feels really odd. Like, it feels so strange just coming out of nowhere and saying, here's this bundle, $35 eShop credit that you can use to buy these two Nintendo games that just came out over the past couple of months, instead of just bundling the game with those, or bundling the console with those games. That's where it's kind of strange. It's like, here's $35, feel free to buy these games, as opposed to, oh, here's a Switch with those games. So that's already an oddity that I'm noticing about this that have left me with more questions than answers, to be honest. I'm also not really a big fan of the look that they're going for. They're using the same Switch. Like, if you can go look at this tweet, you should, because they have the same Switch box, and then they added like this triangular sticker in the corner that has like these bright bubbly fonts, and it's yellow and blue. It looks really cheap. Like, the sticker that they threw on there just looks like some sort of discount marketing ad just thrown on top of it. It does not look Nintendo-esque at all. It really ruins the clean crispness of a box. This is coming from someone who is very intimate when it comes to my boxes. I keep all of them because I like how pretty they look. So maybe I'm a little biased and when it comes to this type of stuff, but like, I don't know. This just kind of seems like they needed to throw something together quick. And if they just gave players or potential consumers $35, that might be a way to spur up Switch sales for the time being. The reason why they might want to be doing that is because they just finished their last earnings call for the end of the third quarter. And of course, if you don't know, they missed their big Nintendo Switch forecast. They were expecting to hit 20 million Switches by the end of the fiscal year. It was very ambitious. And then they recently turned it down to 17 million. So I wonder if this is kind of their way of trying to make up for it as quickly as they can. Maybe they couldn't organize a bundle or a new box or anything significant that would include one of these new games or one of the older games that are already out that maybe would be more applicable to, or more applicable rather, to be bundled in a situation like this. So they just kind of had to put a sticker on the box and say, here's a free $35. But it might be a way to just get some final last minute Switch sales before the end of March, which is the end of their entire fiscal year, so that they don't look as bad as a lot of people were saying that they might look because of the lowered forecast. That's one of my theories. It might not be exactly true, but I don't really understand why they would do this in this fashion out of nowhere. So that's kind of where I think they're coming from. If you are listening to this and you don't have a Switch, maybe this is a good time to jump into it. I personally wouldn't. I feel like you can find better deals for a Nintendo Switch at some point throughout the year. Like, I mean, at the very least, I'm sure you're going to be able to get a Switch deal that actually comes with a game, not just $35 and Nintendo telling you that you can use that to partially buy one of their games. On top of all of the rumors that are going on about a Switch Mini that might be happening within the next year. And of course, I totally do buy into that. I think that that's coming. So if you are on the fence and you are listening to this, I would not be persuaded by this whatever it is that they're running here. This does not seem like the best deal. It just kind of seems like something that they're going to be able to put on stickers on boxes, and people will be seeing it through retail hallways and say like, oh, okay, maybe this might be a motivation for the casual average consumer to go out and buy this. It also actually lines up perfectly with some of the discounts that we're seeing for Labo. Like across the board, I'm seeing on Amazon and Best Buy, Labo is being severely discounted by something like 30 or 40% at times that you can just buy. So I'm not really sure where all this is coming from. It does seem like they're trying to get a final push and get rid of some product right before the end of their fiscal year. And the last story of the report is perhaps the most exciting story. It was for me at least, and it's that several classic and beloved old school role-playing games will be making their way onto Nintendo Switch, as well as other modern consoles later this year. The announcement from Skybound Games reads as follows, quote, Skybound Games and Beamdog today announced a publishing partnership that will bring classic role-playing video games Baldur's Gate, Baldur's Gate 2, Baldur's Gate Siege of Dragonspear, Icewind Dale, Planescape, Torment, and Neverwinter Nights to console platforms in 2019, end quote. The press release continues to detail the partnership between Skybound and Beamdog, basically how they are both very excited to work together to bring these fabled classics back into the modern day consciousness. This, of course, I mean, it's always great news when we hear about new games coming to Nintendo's platforms, but these I think are significant. Baldur's Gate especially has the history, right? It is fabled, it is beloved, it is a series that started it all for almost a lot of the foundations of Western RPGs in general. I mean, back in the old days of video games, back before home consoles really took off, there was this movement of taking the tabletop RPG experience, this Dungeons and Dragons style experience, and porting it onto a video game. Like, how can we make games on PC that would accurately mimic the same feeling of playing Dungeons and Dragons in real life? And that's how we got these super customizable type of, like, you can pick your race and you can change all of your stats and try to play out the life that you want to in a game. And honestly, that was kind of like the beginning of the Western RPG, in my opinion. And that's where Baldur's Gate and that franchise came from. In fact, that's how BioWare got its start, or at least its most meaningful start as a company. And all of their games since then have built from that point in time. So if you haven't played games like this, like Neverwinter Nights and the original Baldur's Gate, as well as its sequel, this is the perfect genesis to kind of go back and explore where games like Mass Effect and Dragon Age have come from, like how they grew into that style of being able to be your own character and picking a morality system and deciding that you want to be this class or that class. Like, these are the games that really started it all. So I'm very excited to see them come to Switch. Now, I remember that there were, for some of these games, ports that came to mobile, because I tried to play at least Baldur's Gate on mobile, and I remember it being incredibly difficult because of the controls. So my hope is that when these games make their way onto the Nintendo Switch, that they're actually going to be one of the best ways to play those games, because they update the controls in some way and make it easier due to the fact that you're actually playing with a controller instead of simply a touchscreen. Although they might just port over the mobile version so that you can still use touchscreen controls if you would like. I personally would not like to do that, not because I don't like touchscreen or anything like that, but I just specifically remember, I mean, like I was talking about earlier, these games have so many options, and you kind of control every single bit of movement for a party in multiple cases, and what they should be doing in combat and such, and being able to click on the direction that your party and team moves in. It can get complicated really quickly, and that's why they were best played with a mouse and keyboard. So I'm hoping that Skybound Games and Beamdog, they work together to actually try to adapt these games into the console era, or into playing with a more traditional controller if they have not already. And if they have, they take the games that have been adapted and put that on the Switch. If they do, this is a no-brainer, as well, as long as they're like decently priced, because these are really old games. I mean, I don't think Baldur's Gate is worth like $30, but if these are like maybe $20 pickups, or maybe even below that, then of course, whenever they come out, if you're at all interested, especially if you're a BioWare fan and you really like the RPG-ness of games like Mass Effect and Dragon Age and Knights of the Old Republic, that one especially, one of my favorites, then you're going to love these games. And if you're a fan of them already, then this is already great news for you. And with that, we're going to get to my favorite part of the show, and that is the question of the day. So the question for Friday, February 8th is, do you think Nintendo would ever try again to go head-to-head with Sony and Microsoft in terms of a high-end, technically capable home console? And if so, what would they have to do to win that generation? Now, this question kind of comes out of nowhere. I just figured, hey, it's Friday. Let's just kind of do something fun and silly, especially because there isn't that much news to chew on, to discuss. So this one I kind of just pulled out of my pocket and said, hey, let's think about this. Let's chew on this. Let's kind of unpack what would be our fun dream scenario about what Nintendo might do if they were trying to go head to head. So I'm going to give my answer first. Do I think Nintendo would ever try to go directly head to head with Sony and Microsoft? Honestly, probably not. I don't think so. I think Nintendo has learned their lesson now, that they excel at trying to do something different, trying to do something unique. They've already went for the more powerful approach in the N64 era. They tried again in the GameCube era, and it wasn't until the Wii and DS that they said, hey, let's do a sidestep and try to break through in a different way. And that's when they were wildly successful. I mean, even the Switch today is constantly being compared to the Wii and DS time period, because that is the marker for success. And then if you look right, what happened right after the Wii? Well, it was their attempt at saying, hey, you are going to have the Wii experience, but you're also going to have the Xbox and PlayStation experience. We want to cover all of our bases. So yes, you're going to have more like new Super Mario Brothers, but you're also going to get Assassin's Creed. You're going to get Mass Effect 3. You're going to get these AAA experiences, Call of Duty on your Wii U. And that was one of the biggest flops that Nintendo had ever put out. Like, that home console was a major disaster in terms of financial sales. So I think, especially after the success of the Wii and now the Switch again, that they firmly understand where they sit in this console war, where they succeed so well based on their ingenuity. They think about the things that the other guys aren't thinking about, and they deliver their games in that special way, in a way that only Nintendo can. So I don't think Nintendo would ever consciously decide to say, hey, we're going to compete with Sony and Microsoft again in terms of, releasing a box that you put under your TV and is high-end, technically capable, does all that stuff. Now, they might kind of sidestep and get there. It might be a tangential reaction to something else, where they are going, in some way, but then all of a sudden, because their goals cross a line, that there is a valuable or a valid alternative to a future Xbox or a future Sony platform. I can see that happening, but I don't think Nintendo would ever consciously decide to do that. Now, let's say they did. Let's go to the second part of the question. Let's say Nintendo does, whether consciously or not, they do now have a platform that could compete with the future Xbox or a future PlayStation. How do they win that generation? Well, I think they have to rely on their strengths. So the way that Sony and Microsoft fight each other right now is with their differences, right? At the end of the day, both of those games play the same AAA experiences. You can still play Red Dead Redemption, you can still play Kingdom Hearts 3, Resident Evil 2, these top tier experiences that sell a lot of copies. Well, it doesn't really matter where you're playing them. I mean, occasionally you could argue that, hey, for instance, playing Xbox One X is going to get you the most ultimate graphically intensive experience, sure, but at the end of the day, I don't think those are where the decisions are made for most people. I think the decisions are made in what sets them apart. So first party content, that's one of the reasons why Sony does so well when compared to Microsoft, and that's how Microsoft is planning to catch up next generation with all their accusations or acquisitions rather of development studios that happen in this generation, because they want to bolster their first party lineup, and also things like their online capabilities, what they offer in terms of their services, how well their operating system is set up, the features of each individual console. So those are the things that make the difference, and Nintendo is going to have to leverage their strengths in order to say, yes, you can play the latest Call of Duty as an example, as well as all of the latest AAA experiences like Destiny and Anthem and Resident Evil. They would have to be strong enough technically to cover those bases, which again, in this hypothetical situation, we are assuming that they are. And where they would really shine, how they would really get ahead of these other guys, is if they focus and triple down on their first party content, because their first party content is bar none. No one beats Mario, no one beats Zelda. I don't care how far ahead Sony seems to be getting, or how forward Sony seems to be getting in their first party content, because they do have incredible development studios putting out like wildly amazing experiences with Spider-Man and God of War and The Last of Us and Uncharted. That's great. They will still never have the clout of a Mario Kart. It's just, there's something so dynamic and history based of those games. They've been along for so long that it's just, you're always going to be playing catch up. So Nintendo has to double down on their IP. They have to make sure that they are putting out stellar first party content all of the time, similar to what they're doing with the Switch. And then they kind of have to figure out how to get into the online service market in a different way. Because if Nintendo is ever going to succeed in this situation, they're not ever really going to be able to catch up with Sony and Microsoft when it comes to Xbox Live and PSN. There are so many expectations already set up for those services that Nintendo just, I mean, they're going to have to do something else if they're going to attract people. And I think it's going to be taking something like Nintendo Switch Online and just blowing it up into something that all of the other services don't really do. They're going to need to take the entire virtual console experience, as an example, put it into Nintendo Switch Online and make it a mega service where you can play all of their IP and all of their games, and turn it into something that is so wholly unique that you can look at and say, wow, yes, this isn't the same as trophies, and it's not as well designed or robust as a PSN, for example, or Xbox Live, for example, but it's so different in Nintendo that it's still attractive enough that I might make the decision to go and buy this new Nintendo box as opposed to PS5 or whatever the next one would be. So those are the things that I think Nintendo would really have to do. They would have to triple down on the first party experiences, keep those going, as well as they need to offer online services and stuff that are unique, that are very different, that still play to their strengths, but also kind of attack the market in a different way, because I just don't see them ever catching up to what Xbox Live and PSN have going for it right now. And that's all I had scheduled for today's show. So if you have your own opinion on what you believe the answer to the question of the day should be, which again is, do you think that Nintendo would ever really try to compete head to head with Sony and Microsoft with a more traditional console, and how would they go about doing that? Make sure to reach out to me. You can do that via my email at heartcontainerspodcast@gmail.com, or you can follow me on Twitter. There's at HC Nintendo for the official Heart Containers Twitter, or at Rome Fawaz if you just want to talk to me personally. Either of them work. I hope you guys had a great show. I hope you had a great week, and I hope your weekend is going to be filled of good things, of rest. That's what my weekend's going to be with, hopefully, because man, do I really need rest. And of course, Nintendo games, whatever it is that you might be playing. This has been Heart Containers episode number 10 for Friday, February 8th. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all real soon.